Go.
Man, I'd have jumped on a plane and.
Okay.
We can do it.
All
It's gonna be good.
right, call it this meeting to order. This is the Columbia Open Space Committee regular meeting for Thursday, January 18, 2024. And we are beginning at 9:02. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 21.
So moved.
Is there a
I-
second?
Has it been corrected that Paul was marked absent?
That,
Which Paul?
Yeah.
Tater.
yeah, he
He
did
moved
change,
it.
he
He
did
moved
change
it.
that. He did change that.
Okay,
With the correction that Paul Ramsey had not been in attendance as reported. In spirit, though, I was here in spirit only.
No. Isn't it, you got the minutes there?
Yeah.
When I first read it, at the top, it says Paul
Yeah.
Tater is absent.
Oh, okay.
yes, members absent, well, see, which.
Yeah.
We want to-
We're fully aware of it.
We know that,
We don't depend on anything.
Good morning.
that's okay. All right,
Oh, I see what you mean. Members asking.
yep, okay,
That
we have made that
did
correction.
after start. So with that correction, I can second.
Okay. All right.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions. One abstention. Okay, audience of citizens, do we have anybody online?
I think everything, no, nobody, just Paul. And
Okay,
anything I have to say, I think is covered in the agenda.
good. Okay. Very good. Okay, we will table, Callie Quasti's report because she's not here. She may tune in later. Okay.
Are we in regular, are you in regular contact with her or at all? Do we have any communication with her?
Once in a blue moon. But I do not,
Too.
I have,
Oh, yeah? That's an excuse.
but I do not have, I have not received any update on the IMBA plan, so. Okay, old business, planning and zoning.
All right, I can give you guys an update on the neighborhood housing latest draft. Have you seen that at all or? Okay. So, well, you guys can see this if you want. No, got to the chase on the open space. Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like one? Okay, so. Again, just a quick overview on this. The scope hasn't really changed. It's to try to do what we can through zoning regulations to make things more affordable. And to give a density incentive per acre so that if someone was to choose to have the highest density. And they set aside certain units as affordable under the state statutes, then they would be allowed to use a full density. Whereas if they don't, it's just market rate. They would be allowed to use a lower density. So where we landed with this is not finalized. I have to review it actually with John Guskowski this afternoon, and then maybe if there's some different iterations. But when it comes to our latest approach with the subcommittee on this, we took a lot of stuff out. We really felt that there was some arbitrary stuff in there that we removed as far as how to figure out on an acre, how many units should be there. A lot of times we just throw numbers and we started with 7 units if they're market based, 12 units if you take the affordability approach and you follow the state statutes. And that was one of the big things we changed. We said, listen, there's health codes, there's building codes. That determines your units, maximum units per acre. So we're not throwing arbitrary numbers. And then we reduce the units that the applicant can build if they do not set aside a certain percentage of them as affordable. So we're trying to take some of the arbitrariness out of it. I think it started as a 6-page document, now it's like 3.5. So there was some of that in there, trying to think of the other major changes, some of it is verbiage. When it comes to open space, it's very difficult to have two things true at the same time. This is a focused regulations on trying to make things more affordable. If we set aside 15% as an open space allocation, you're potentially taking 15% of the buildable property away from the applicant. So you can't have that not negatively affect the cost of the projects in some cases, right? Because of the narrow scope of this, we just felt it was more appropriate that, because the concerns when we talked about open space amongst the public and amongst the subcommittee were, well, buffer zones and making sure that if you have higher density projects on a smaller lot, which is still 4 acre minimum in this, that it's more of a visual thing. It's more of, I want to have a area, a buffer of to not see certain things or to have certain things hidden. And I think if I'm reading into this, that was the original intent of the open space set aside provision, was to make sure that there were those buffer zones. But we can do that without saying, well, we're just going to take 15% of it. It may be a situation where there's a condition on approving the application that says, well, you need to have certain landscaping here or certain, open space here, but the town and its normal taking of open space is not going to get involved. We'll make that as a condition of the application being approved. So we did take that out because of the nature of the regulation and how focused it is. So beyond that, there's some verbiage changes and stuff that we have to review, but I think we're closer. It's not a finished product yet, but that's for this particular piece, which I think was the main question around that. That's where we're at, so.
So I kind of phased out what you're talking. So is there going to be spaces for recreation? Or and I'm a developer, can I come in there and just plug in as many houses as I can possibly fit based on regulations with no consideration of amenities?
It depend on the situation. So we're not gonna, it's
I
not,
realize developers are very aggressive.
sure,
I go down to Florida and visit my son down there continually.
Yeah.
And they have very open things and it looks shitty.
Mhm.
They just put up houses.
Yeah.
And they can physically do it, they can do all that, so you gotta realize you're dealing with people who aren't necessarily people in this room.
Mhm.
The people who come in is only the dollar. So you're gonna have some control over, because when the developer comes in, he's gonna look at your regulations, they're gonna take them word for word, and they're gonna do it as strictly as they possibly can. One of the other suggestions I had is, I think before you get these things approved, or at least as a part of the process, I got involved heavily with a project in Killingwood where the town redid the regulations. And then they invited all the local engineers, surveyors, builders to come in and have input on this,
Yep.
just give some reflection, because you have a certain point of view. I'm not sure your background. But if you don't realize this, you say one word here, another word there, it can make a huge difference.
absolutely.
And we went to the Killingwood, and it was a positive thing. We actually went, there was numbers there. We pointed out one in the regulations would have been a disaster.
Mhm.
So I'm just suggesting that might be something you may want to put in the future.
That's already built into it. I've reached out to 2 people so far, and we're open to reaching out to more.
How did you reach out to?
Reached out to one developer I'm currently in contact with.
I don't know the developer, I'm talking
Yeah.
about designers, engineers,
Sure.
surveyors.
Yeah, no, I'm open to that, yeah.
I mean, developers aren't, they're your enemy.
Well, they need
In one
this,
sense.
so
In one sense, they're an enemy, in one sense, they're your friend.
I'm not looking at it as enemy or friend, but I'm looking at it as, from a developer's perspective, is this reasonable, understanding that a developer is going to take advantage of the regulations that we have, so
I've
therefore,
been doing this for 40 years.
I got it, yeah,
And I've seen horrible things. Most of the bad regulations you have now in the book are reactions to developers took advantage of the regulations that they were.
Yep.
So this could be you should kind of pull back and say, let's give more freedom. I'm just gonna make sure you have some control. It's
Sure.
not the Wild West. I mean.
sure, and I understand that criticism.
I'm not really criticizing, I'm making sure.
Oh, no, but, oh, no, I get it, but I think here's what I would like, and I understand your perspective for sure. And if you take the time and go through it all, and there are those concerns, you're like, yeah, I have experience with this isn't gonna work, or this is some of the negatives that we've seen from this. I wanna have those conversations. My intent is not to have it that way, so I don't wanna jump the gun and say, well,
Well, a good example, but we have the piece over here, it's the piece, the 200 acres next to,
Rickford,
not Richard.
Kansas,
No. The piece over by Heber. What's his name?
Jake's,
Jake's, thank you. The Jake's property. That's a huge piece of property. That could be developed somewhere, I don't know if it ever will be. Hopefully we'll save it as open space. Let's make believe it's gonna be developed. There are areas in there which are, you're not gonna put a track out because the land isn't that good.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have, when there are areas, because first of all, we don't have a lot of great land. It's not like we have, like in Florida, where they have open
yeah,
land.
there's a ton of physical
You
limitations.
can just build, we got all kinds of limitations. So from the point of open space, it'd be nice if there were areas, I don't know how you work this in, it's very, very complicated, but if there's an area that's wetlands and kind of rugged areas, to be some incentive to the developer to set aside that to, you know, particularly like that piece where it's abutting the state forest. Those are the things, you don't want to throw the open space, we don't have a lot of leverage in open space in town. The only thing we really get is that 15% or set aside.
Mhm.
And other than that, there's not a lot that we have. So you take those things away and so, I don't know, the things that are there aren't necessarily bad. I understand your charge is because you're trying to get affordable housing.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you're targeting any particular properties either.
No, and we can't, we're looking at everything in its totality. This, one of the things that we've done incorrectly, in my view, is we've done much targeting with regulation. So generally, there's two ways that we've regulated. The first way is somebody wants to do something. There's a piece of property that wants to go through some sort of activity or development or a project or whatever. And we're building a regulation that's very specific and micromanaging that particular project, or it's reactionary. Somebody did something which was part of your concern. Somebody did something that people didn't like, so therefore we reacted with a regulation, which then has downstream negative effects and positive effects. So regardless of what we're talking about, whether it's open space or the particular projects or the regulation process of building regulations or creating regulations, there's positive and negatives to both. That's why we're taking the time to try to do this right and get as much input as we can. So
So let's be townwide. I'm really
in the RA zone,
everything in the RA zone will go into this.
yes.
So will just the elimination of, so will be no open space set aside, it will be eliminated.
Ask the question again.
Will the open space set aside be eliminated?
No, that's one of the, I think people are getting confused about that. So the main open space set asides are in the subdivision regulations. This is not a subdivision regulation. This is a completely separate regulation.
So what is it?
Well, it started as a regulation to allow retirement facility homes, basically.
Which
So
is
what-
important.
Well, and we're using that as the basis of this regulation, so that one will go away and be modified to expand to allow, so it's not just age restricted. So the first one was age restricted. This is not age restricted, because my concerns,
So that means you're eliminating senior housing.
no, it's inherent with this, it's included.
How do you?
it's senior plus affordable.
Yeah, which can be, so if the developer came in or whoever owns the
We're not
project.
going to be paid in the assets.
No, that's fine, it's totally fine. If somebody comes in and wants to apply and do a project under these regulations, they could make it restricted to 55 and older if they wanted, but the problem with that is then that limits your market. So like I have two main concerns. No one's retiring here, very few people are retiring, okay? And then I have a 15-year-old son in a few years, he's gonna have to figure out where he's gonna live, right? If we just restrict it to 55 and older, that greatly limits the opportunity for everyone under 55 and older who still needs something affordable or a starter home. This regulation broadens that to everyone So that if a builder comes in,
I see what you're saying.
you know, so when we talk about the open space like this, the original 55 and older community regulation that this is based off of. It didn't even require a fee in lieu, it randomly set 15% of the land as open space, so the open space set asides. Other than this might happen a couple of times, like I don't even know what projects fell under the original scope of the regulation. But all of the other stuff, when it comes to set asides for open space and fees and lieu in the subdivision regulations, which is a separate document. So,
Okay, perhaps you could put into this open space principles. In other words, look at the piece of land and define what is built. Now, to a developer, anything is developable because all you have to do is drive down towards the gas station and look at those houses perched on cliffs with driveways that I would never in my life want to come out of.
Or drive on Bodett Terrace, and on the whole left side of Bodett Terrace. and
Yeah,
people on
Bodett
cliffs.
Terrace is another
That's
one.
worse.
They float houses on wetlands, things like that. You know, things like that. If you take a look at the whole property first, and I don't know how you would put that in here, and say this much of this property is built. Can you get a house there without encroaching on a wetland? Is it on relatively flat land? Can you get a septic in there? Can you get a reasonable driveway or road in there? And if you could write those parameters into it, that unit of this, say, 10-acre piece, you may only build this much of it. And this much, the wetland, the steep slope, the whatever, will be left open.
I think some of that problem is probably inherent to the way through it already. But let me put the thought to it. So the one I'm trying to balance not micromanaging too much. We have a tendency to do that. So the way I would look at this is that an applicant comes to us and says, okay, well, here's what I want to do, and they meet septic requirements and health code requirements and building requirements. There's going to be a footprint where the project is, where the buildings are, and then there's going to be inevitably open space somewhere or an area that is not being used. Depending on your perspective, whether you like it or not, because it's under a special permitting process, there's a lot of leverage with the members of the zoning commission to put stipulations on or conditions on approval of that permit. And they can, I mean, we could say this particular piece, you know, is encroaching on where you want to build, you should ship this over, or like maybe leave this alone. And, you know, there's those discussions that will be inherent in the process.
Is there any design review? This, I mean,
yeah.
You see, in the checklist, these plans, you know, when a developer comes up with a plan, it's supposed to come to open space and conservation before you get too far down the road.
This
So-
is a review process.
Yeah, we're supposed to get,
Well, you don't know if they're limiting that.
I wasn't aware of that.
uh,
So, which if it's there, and trust me, I've been trying to learn as I go with the regulation, there's so much in there. So
but
it's probably
there's
in
a
there,
checklist for some.
probably within the application
This
process.
is not
Yes.
subdivision, you're saying.
Yes, So before the developer breaks ground, before he finalizes, you see, before it's gonna cost him money. Open space and conservation are supposed to provide input. Not that we have any power to say, no, you can't do that, because that's planning and zoning's purview. But if you make it a real consultation in input, then we could go out, walk it. We can look at all the maps and we can say, this section over here is not a good place to build, but over here is fine. See, and
Does
we
this
were,
checklist exist now?
yes, it did under Paul's stall.
Okay, then, okay, so it's probably a procedural checklist as part of the application, so it wouldn't
Right.
necessarily be, we may say within the regulations, you have to follow the application process, and it's probably.
But I do know, is that in the subdivision regulations? You're talking about? Or
No,
I mean,
it's
'cause
in
I don't have to go
the,
through that, if I'm building a house on an individual approved lot, I don't have to do open space. So are you talking
No.
about, I bought
This is
20
in the-
acres in there and I,
in the approval process. So you and the developer do your thing, you draw up this plan, you bring it to
under
the-
what thing though, is that subdivision? The subdivision, because he said it's not a subdivision. So I'm not sure how that's different, how we're gonna handle that differently.
I don't know, it depends on where that.
You know, subdivision has very specific statutes and all that stuff. Where I'm not sure exactly what you're proposing, because you did say this is not a subdivision.
It's not part of the subdivision regulation, yeah, separate.
So these may be new regulations, you may have to have a checklist instigated. I'm not sure.
but we provide input because a developer is not going to have the same point of view. So we just provide that point of view. You see, Rob is unique. He's a surveyor. He works for developers, but he's also in his heart concerned with the environment. So he has a different perspective. A different surveyor may not.
Yep.
You know, and that's why we worked very hard to get it in the application approval checklist, that it would come to us before planning and zoning and hearings and stuff like that. Because Lyman Woods would be very different, I think. That would have gone differently if we had, if conservation and open space had the opportunity before to look at it.
Yeah, and I think that actually makes sense, because, and I'll have to look into it, to see, my assumption is that's probably part of the subdivision application process.
It is.
Okay, so let me ask that question. I think input throughout the process, regardless of your perspective and where you're coming from, has to happen.
Right.
So, and that's where it's appropriate to occur. So just so you know where I'm coming from, if the choice is, let's collaborate and have that conservation open space discussion as part of the process versus we have a regulatory standard that says the town gets 15% of the land. I think the first option of having a collaborative process. Now, of course, you could have a collaborative process and figure out, well, where's the 15% of the land going to be? But in some cases, maybe there's a higher recommendation. Well, with the lot as it is and the project that you're proposing, maybe 20% of the area should be set aside as a common space or an open space. Not necessarily even that the town takes possession of it, but there's a way of configuring it that makes more sense. And then in other areas, we may look at an application and say, it's not appropriate to do anything, and maybe everyone in here agrees that that's the way. There's a spectrum of where we can land.
Right.
So I think that from my point of view, and really the reason why I'm in favor of that is because I don't like the arbitrariness of it. I would rather that everyone collaborate and say, okay, well, here's our suggestions on this. Ultimately, it comes down to the commission and the conditions that they put on the applicant. But it's not throwing the baby out with bathwater. And I don't want anybody to get that interpretation as it's this point where one side doesn't want any open space and the other side is concerned that there isn't gonna be any open space provided. It's a matter of looking at it more on an individualistic basis, because that's what the applications allow us to do.
Right, and so this is different from the regular subdivision.
Yeah, this is always been a separate regulation.
So the regular subdivision regulations, the developer's gonna build the biggest, most, he's gonna make as much money as he can. And the open space set aside still applies there.
That has not changed. That's the way it is now, yes.
Good, because, I really hate accepting 15% so that we have these little postage stamps all over town. But that is our only source.
Yeah, I think that
of
there can be improvements on that for sure, and how that's
Yeah.
handled, like, but let me just, I'll end with this, and I don't want to take up the whole time, but let's just think about this in a more broader perspective. This is not a subdivision regulation, this is an individual regulation for this particular type of product. It's a zone, it's in the purview of zoning. And the way it was originally drafted was to just have a 15% set aside for open space, right? And you guys know, at least from my point of view, why we changed that. Because this is an individual zoning regulation, we have zoning regulations on structures. All right, so you could put up a wood shed, you could put up a garden shed, it could be a 6x6 building. There's no minimum square footage requirement for a zoning permit, it has to meet zoning requirements. I know this sounds absurd, but it's an apples to apples comparison. This is why we need to be smart with how we do this. Because that's a zoning permitted application process to put up a shed. And this is obviously a bigger project, but it's still a zoning application. Technically, I could go to the subcommittee on Monday and say, guys, open space is really, really, really important. And anytime anyone goes in and fills out an application, put up a wood shed or a garden shed or anything else, as a condition of that application, we're gonna add a 15% set aside for open space. Now, why you laugh, rightly so, because it's absurd, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's absurd. But the advantage of why that's absurd is because someone taking advantage of this regulation might be once every few years. Someone applying for a shed to get a zoning permit for a shed happens throughout the year all the time. And if we treated them the same way, it'd be like, this makes no sense. So that's part of the reason why, at least I looked at it, is it's gotta be smart. Because we could put all kinds of conditions on people and they wouldn't like it. And so there's a fairness aspect of it too, and the consistency aspect, and putting things where they belong. And just keep that in mind. There's all kinds of precedents that can be set, good or bad. So it's just the zoning process and the zoning application review, and that's what this is.
I just have my question again. Is there any type of design review? Because I mean, you know, you've seen some affordable housing that just look like shacks.
Mhm.
I mean, is there any kind of design review?
Yeah, there's a full architectural review. It still falls under, a lot of stuff that we had in here was redundant. So when there's like height restrictions and all of those things that go into like the physical look and feel of it, all of that stuff is reviewed. We have to be careful because we don't want to turn into a townwide neighborhood association. You know, everybody has to have the same mailbox and can't put a flag. That really gets difficult. So, you know, if, as an individual commission member, I'm looking at that as what's reasonable, not what I want to build, but what's reasonable for that person. Like, I'm not gonna put my point of view on it.
Under these regulations, one of the things we've looked into in my company, my old company, is we have a developer in Bolton who's now taken an individual building block. He's now building a building with 6 individual units for affordable housing, for East Senior Housing. As long as it, you know, that we're able to put a septic system in, well, all that stuff applied and stuff. Is that something on an individual basis, like, because one of the problems with what we're gonna find here, there's not a lot of,
No.
not like we have 50 acres sitting out there that's ready to be developed into this. There's not much land left in the town, to be honest.
Yep.
But we do have building lots. So whether, is that something like just on an individual basis, I could come in there, I have a approved building lot, like I said, I would like to do this one building, which has got 4 units in it. And it would be some form of either, I mean, it'd have to be senior housing, it could be, it would have to be.
Yeah,
Would that be able to work into that? Like, sounds like maybe it would.
it would, if it was at least 4 acres, the minimum's 4 acres right now, it's right.
Why 4 acres?
Because the main concern, it is an arbitrary number that people are concerned about. Well, do I want to live next to that? And is 1 acre big enough versus 4 acres versus 10 acres? So it's a matter of.
Because we have a lot more 1 and 2 acre lots than we have 4
Yeah,
acre.
right now. So you alluded to the fact of, listen, I'm very open with my viewpoints. I'm less is more type of guy, right? So I would be fine with 1 acre, but I don't think I don't think everybody else is. I think if you had a suitable piece of land and you're 100% right, a lot of people go to like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be, there's developments everywhere, so we just don't have the land to sustain that. It's not in the parks really. So 4 acres was determined because they felt that would be the most viable for people to accept it, because it would be a big enough piece of property. But if you had a suitable 2 acre piece of property, you could do just the same thing.
I'm just wondering how much, I mean, wouldn't you have the ability to, in your review. With certain language, you gotta put some of this language in there, you know, like it has to meet some sort of criteria as far as impact on the neighborhood and stuff like that. I mean, I'm just telling you, physically, it is possible, to take a 1 acre lot and put a 6 unit, 1 bedroom apartments on it. It's approved and voted.
Absolutely. And right now,
And that might be, that would be, we have more of those in town of Columbia than we have 10 acre lots, even 4 acre lots that we can do this.
Yeah.
So to really satisfy the need for either adult senior housing or for your son 10 years from now, or 20, how old he is. 15 years from now, you know, find a place you can stay in the neighborhood. But you're gonna find no problem even anyways, but it's always a possibility. I had 1 in Florida, 1 in Enfield, so.
yeah. Goes.
Okay,
No, it's all good stuff. Okay.
okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well,
So that checklist, somebody's gonna figure out where it is and who manages it?
I'll look into it. I have a meeting. with
John.
Tom second.
Yes, and he should have it.
Yeah.
It's a whole checklist that,
As to who gets it in what order and all that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's part of the application process. I'll just see
It
what
is.
that scope of that is.
This would be special exceptions, is that, this under
Special permits.
special?
Trust me, there will be no lack of input. It's-
So which means it's not an open, there's no specific. The developer can't come in and say, I got it by right, he has to approve.
No, it's not by right.
Which, that's a pretty big control thing.
okay. Moving right along to Route 66 property. This is,
Is that the tower,
yes,
the cell tower?
yes,
Mark said this morning that the owner of the property has turned all their legal work over to him, that they've given up talking to the cell tower company. So Mark is gonna take up the negotiation about working out the right of way to the approach through there. And that was that.
so it's still alive,
Oh, yeah, it sounds like, yeah.
maybe not well. What,
Who owns that? So,
sure,
It's a cell tower company.
the company.
yeah, the company,
Yeah.
Find out well, because my nephew used to work for the company, I think, that owned it, you know. So I'm going there next week. I'll see if he owned it.
Yeah, I don't know what.
but what we're,
He's in Florida, but it's SBA, they own like half the towers in the state, Connecticut.
yeah. The
I mean,
issue is we're trying to get access over the road to,
Well, I think they had access, but I think what Mark, we wanted to do is we wanted to move the gate so we could create some parking outside the gate. I think that was, I don't know, that's when last time I talked to Mark was,
right,
because we want to make some changes.
so more to follow. If nothing, I need a favor, you. Pine Street Park,
Yes.
you want to handle that one?
Mark and I met with, I forget his name now, the next door neighbor that's been a pain in the butt, his tone has softened considerably. Part of it is that I think he's come to the conclusion he probably can't do it. Because it's so, basically what's happened is they throw every bit of crap into it right away, it's gonna make it very difficult.
Yes.
So I've been asked by the selectmen that if I go out and create a sketch showing where a path would go. So part of that process, I'm gonna have to actually go out there and locate stuff. I've been estimating it for years. At this point, it's the real deal. So we're gonna actually show where we can put a path. And then at least it's a camera run, because first thing. Anyways, he seemed, well, basically what his attorney has said, show us a path and we'll see if we like the idea. So that's a lot further than won't talk to you kind of thing. So there's a little bit of legal room here. So at some point, when weather gets a little warmer, I'm not going to do it soon. I'm going to Florida next Thursday, so when I come back, hopefully, maybe I'll ask for a volunteer to help me. Sure.
Did I see your hand go up?
Do we need to talk to the neighbor on the other side too at the same time or not?
We did, actually, it was kind of tricky because we were there and then Melissa's husband came out, whose name I forget right now. We talked to him a little bit, so it's like, he seemed more amenable, but then you know how that goes.
Yep.
It's good,
Yeah.
one person thinks it's okay, Melissa may think not near my horses kind of thing, so. But I tried to explain, we're trying to do this, create a trail, and even the next door neighbor there, he said, well, maybe you put up a fence. So the fact that he said put up a fence kind of made, well, he's starting to think in his mind that this is gonna happen. And he's trying to now make it.
I think once you find a way to put a trail through there, I think Mark's intent is to do it. Because that's what he basically said this morning, was if I'm putting a trail through, I'm putting a road through.
Yeah.
That was his response this morning.
Well, one of the things I thought of this morning as I was driving over here, right now there's, his property abuts us and we have all this, and basically, if you really take his property, his garage is barely on his property. And plus the wall we built and all that stuff. If we were to, whether we could actually move Kinney Road and make it come in through our piece there, and then turn it into it, and then we could actually give him that piece. This next, because it's not of no use to us. That's a lot of things, we're at the beginning, but at least we're negotiating now to do something.
Right.
That's a
And
big deal.
through research, we have established that it's not Kinney Road, it's Wells Woods Road. And it was mistakenly named Kinney Road when Island Woods went in. So it's Wells Woods Road, which runs from Hebron.
Which makes sense, actually.
Yeah, to that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny ends at with the even.
Well, what's the road between Wellswood and Kinney Road? That is a road that goes to Overland. Is that a road?
It was like Johnson or something on whatever the family name was that used to own the farm down in there.
That's the other thing you have to realize, if you do any kind of research, land records, roads names change all the
Yep.
time.
Yeah, they
You
do.
read one deed, all of a sudden it's Peter's Road, then it's John's Road, and it's referred to in a number of deeds, and all of a sudden it'll just change. Which is very confusing. You're looking at old deeds, and you're looking for John's Road, and all of a sudden it's no longer John's Road back in 1850, it's somebody else's road.
You know, and some of the things it said Schoolhouse Road too, because the old schoolhouse was on Wells Woods.
But I think I find this a positive anyways. I think we're at the point where we're actually just. Mark and I walked down and unfortunately, the roads out there, where the old path was, that's where the water's not been going for the last 100 years. And it's gonna be difficult. But, if everyone agrees it can be done, I think, it's only a hiking trail. But still, even as a hiking trail, it would be done.
So we take more of a partner-minded approach with the neighbors at this point.
Hopefully, yes. Which is what we've been trying to do, actually. I'm just gonna get them to talk to us. We had to have some leverage on us, so that way you can have a little bit of.
Now, his property card was never updated to reflect that addition of land, and he's never paid taxes on that additional land.
I haven't told that.
I mean, that's my understanding and the research I've done. So I don't know how you can claim to own something if there's not a property card with your name on it and you haven't paid taxes. And if,
Well, it's complicated.
no, I know, I'm,
Anyway,
But anyway, the message is we're making
there's,
progress. There's progress.
there's a little softening.
Yes,
in
and
the
people begin to
attitudes.
talk to us and we're not trying to do anything to harm people. We're just trying to create a path.
Okay. Do we have any report on Hop River Trail? Nothing, I've heard nothing, right? Have you?
the Hop River, I've kind of watched stuff that was going on, but, nothing,
We come out with a calendar.
yeah, in competition with the Bolton calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 12 Town Trail Alliance, that's you.
Yep, I reached out to them recently and everything that's out there on the website related to it is all the old information going back to about a year ago.
Yep.
And the only, on the public side, they're still pointing at Paula Stahl and Mark Walters as the contacts for Columbia, even though I had asked them to move me up to primary.
Yeah,
So I reached out to them again this week and said, hey, what's going on? Are there meetings? Are there?
Yeah.
So I'll let you know when I do hear something.
okay. Hop River Preserve is in Limbo, Jones, in Mexico. The ground penetrating radar report came in. And it has a whole lot of diagrams. And it looks like it confirms pretty much what Jones maps show. So that's going on. And
That's actually with the bridge work.
I think the
No,
Bridgeport came
it's-
to Hall.
yeah, the bridge work, there's some supply problem with the steel beams.
Oh, yeah, they'll pay for the.
What?
Pay for this, looking for the sign.
The GPR.
Yeah.
The tap. Yeah. And I put the budget in, I prepared the budget for conservation. Because we actually have a budget. So I included a couple of things for open space, like money for us all to attend the Connecticut Land Conservation Council shindig in Middletown in March, if you're interested. And that's and I put in $3,000 for to purchase the 1 acre between the Hop River Bridge and the Hop River Preserve, because it limits our access to the sluiceway. And we have, I think, a willing seller. So I put that in. Normally, we pay $2,000 an acre for open space. But I think we'll probably offer $3 because that's what the poor man has been paying in taxes.
It's different, it's not like a big, huge tract of land. So
It's 0.9
if
acre.
you got 100 acres, 2,000 makes sense. If there's one, basically it's going to get just $3,000.
That's all he's doing.
So you have to make-
So I put it in the budget, we'll see if that flops. Because Stephen stuck his head there and said, no, did everything, so. We'll see, I tried.
And that's under the open space budget or
No.
under conservation? Okay.
Because open space has no.
I just wanted to make sure that wasn't just a misspeak.
Oh, no. Open space has no budget, no funding.
Well, if you have no funding, you can't have a
We have
budget.
money in the council.
Hmm?
We have money somewhere in the council, right?
A little bit.
Yeah, we do. We do, actually, but We have no control over it. It's not our budget.
Would the idea be for any allocation money for that piece of land to come out of that money that we have already in the account?
Yes,
Okay.
if we have it.
Got it.
Right, and when I put in the budget, I put in everything we want, or I want. And then if it makes it into the budget, it doesn't go under open space. It goes under Board of Selectmen's budget. So they put it in different places. Like, for instance, the gates for Monopond State Park would go under DPW rather than conservation. If we were to purchase this 0.9 acre, that would come under the Board of Selectmen budget, not conservation. See, they took it in different budgets.
So you take that out of open space fund. Yeah.
Right, which is under the purview of the Board of Selectmen. It's not under our purview. It's part of their budget, it's their account, but it can, by statute, can only be spent on open space. So we have no power here, just the power of suggestion. So that's the Hop River Preserve, Salmon River watershed.
Nothing since last.
Nothing, okay. Friends of Monopond,
Yes, we got no sand.
No, it's a bi-monthly.
yeah,
The salmon are enjoying the winter, or, going to me.
in
Do
Florida.
we have any bears?
Well, I've certainly heard nothing about that. I'm sure there are. But I haven't seen them involved.
I don't think there are very many salmon in the Salmon River because
They haven't gone up that far.
because of the dams that were built in the 18th and 19th century. It blocked the salmon, so they went out.
Probably not past Moodus.
Yeah,
Oh, there's a fish ladder there,
Is there?
just above that Leesville.
Okay.
yeah,
That's the dam that I visited, so.
yeah. There's a movement, conservation movement in the state to take out, breach these old dams or build fish ladders where the dam is still important. And they are working to reintroduce salmon to native salmon to our rivers.
There's a whole new technology for how they do the culverts under roads and things too, rather than just the flat,
Yeah. Okay, Friends of Monopond, do you have anything to report yet?
Just a little bit. So we haven't met, we met in October, but with holidays and things, we haven't met. We're planning to meet after this meeting. A lot of what we want to do is dependent on getting feedback from DEP, TPL, IMBA, so there's nothing that we've been really authorized to do yet, since we haven't really heard that the contracts are done or what to do. I know this group, we put together a list for TPL to give to IMBA for stakeholders.
Mhm.
Haven't heard anything back on where that's going. So I think we're looking forward to this year being involved with a lot of that stuff once it kicks off. But right now, everything's same thing with Pine Street. Until Pine Street is approved as we can't put up a kiosk or do anything or.
We'll build the parking lot.
We had talked a little bit about potentially doing some trail work out in Minbrook around the pond out there. But this year, last year with all the rain and right now it's not the appropriate time to do it. So.
No.
So ask me again in 3 months.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's old business, new business. Tell us about strategies for conserving your land.
Well, Ann and Chris and I met to start roughing out a document. Basically giving people who might be interested in conserving property that they own, what their alternatives are. I had hoped that we'd have a rough draft for this meeting, but Chris went to Washington, babysit, and he was drafting them. And I passed out a couple meetings ago. There's probably half a dozen properties in town that could use this information. The one that I cite most often are the couple that we met down at the beach during the summer, where she and her brother own 35 acres in town and do not want it developed, want to do something with it, but she didn't have a clue as to where to start. So the idea is just give them a document that says, you can talk to the town planner, the town administrator, there's Joshua Trust, there's a number of different options. Not leading them directly to us, though I'm sure Mark, if someone approached Mark would defer it to us. But people, it's amazing. And in development and fundraising, the big principle is that you need to ask people, or at least give them the information, because people will say over and over again, they'll be asked, why didn't you donate before? And they'll just say, we were never asked. So you need to give them the information. I will say that I had a bit of a fright. 2 pieces of property, well, one has been on the market, but 2 pieces of property on Wellswood. The one Schlesinger piece that actually is right at the intersection of Hunt and Wellswood, that the driveway is on Hunt. And then another piece of property a little ways down Wellswood, going back. Both properties are about 25 acres, and both properties are being offered for about $200,000. Unbelievable. And I was afraid that one of them was Peter Marcuse, but it's not. I went out and checked the telephone poles this morning.
The piece, I know, the piece.
I didn't even know there was another 25 acres.
And it's, everything back of Hunterwood and back of Wellswood is like 3 acres. Kind of thing, like 6 lots.
Which
It's between Fox Run and Wellswood and Hunt and
east or west of Wellswood?
East of Wellswood.
east,
Okay,
east of Wellswood, south of Hunt.
yep.
But I thought it might be the piece that we had wanted,
Now,
but
We wanted to improve.
no,
yeah,
that,
35 acres each, yeah.
that
Yes.
one is not of interest because to us, because it doesn't actually apply. It's completely surrounded by development on all sides.
Those are the pieces that when I talked to him, but I haven't talked to, as messenger, but they're fairly large individual lots where you could probably put a 5 or 6 unit thing in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's one to watch.
It's like,
That would
it's
be
an old
perfect.
subdivision. All we did is, there was a big hunk of land that, his father left. And then what he's done now, he said, well, this little lot up here, instead of, we're gonna make it bigger and make it now this piece, and there's a couple little lots here, all the lots that run along Wellswood and Hunt Road. He's basically expanded them, and they're big lots now. I'm not sure, I didn't do the final plan mark there, so I'm not sure exactly what they look like, but I think there's 6 lots in there, something like that, because they're all big.
Yeah, See, but this piece is relatively flat. It's got some wet on it, but no steep slopes, right?
Yeah, it's all really, I mean, some slopes, but it's really flat.
Yeah,
The soils aren't the greatest. That's, it's down, so because it's flat, if the soils, I want to take, but it's big.
Yeah. There'll be some limiting factors there, but somebody wants to do something like that.
That'd be a piece that.
sure.
be a little
But it
piece
would
of-
be perfect for this
I
affordable.
think somebody in one of the committees is already scoping it out. For this, for a
You know, it,
senior or low income. But anyway,
but that would be really good for us. And,
so
and
to be,
it's,
to be
and it's
continued.
not abutting, but it's near to Mile Pond State Park. Be very desirable. It's close to 66 or,
I think that's the only piece I can think of in town, actually.
You
I
know,
don't,
you know, the very
I mean,
best piece of.
that's a perfect place to develop. And part of it could be
What's his name?
if you made the
Ramsey?
developer
Ramsey?
aware.
They've all been equipped. Oh. Oh, tunnel space.
That,
Well, that is put that way. Okay.
And yes,
I mean,
that,
To me.
yeah, that whole swath is,
to me, that's the perfect place. I don't think anyone has ever even approached him.
well, whatever.
Someone else
Okay.
is charged.
And I alluded to the CLCC conference on March 23rd, Wesleyan. It's really a good conference. I go every year and you can just learn so much. It's
You can also meet people there. That's where I'm at the,
TBL.
yeah, that's where I'm at the
Network.
past director of the
Oh.
trust department.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities show up. All the land trusts are there. And you meet people who are in the business of conserving land and conservation. They have lots of workshops on birds and agriculture and things like that. It's one of the best conferences. And they take over, it's during Wesleyan spring break. So they take over like the whole campus. There's like 3 or 4 buildings. And about 5,000 people come.
Fine.
Because I think close to since COVID's over. Anyway, any other business? Oh, I'm 1 minute over. Oh, started 2 minutes late. I moved nature.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you for attending.
Take care.
Yep.
Stop recording. Yes.